Hi, Lisa.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Good to see you here.
Good to see you too. I like your office.
Thank you. I haven't seen you in a while. It's
I
been,
know. So you had a nice time away?
yeah, I did. And you're going on vacation next week, right?
Yeah, I'm going to be actually off the grid, so maybe no internet, maybe no cell.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay. Well, enjoy. Before we get started, I'm going to get some water. I'll be right back.
Excellent.
Okay. So Lisa, I have the slides here. I will control the sharing screen, so just let me know when you'd like me to hit next. If that's okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Can the admin give me a share screen ability, please?
Yes. Could you show me? Can you show now?
Okay, yeah, let me check real.
Yeah.
1 second. Just left my water. Okay. Okay, I can share.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So, we would like to welcome you guys. Can we start now? Is that okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining our class today. My name is Jack. I am with First American Title, and I have Lisa Villarreal with First American Exchange. Lisa will talk on exchange, and I will talk on the closing and title and escrow closing perspective of an exchange. So, Lisa, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, thank you. So Lisa is going to touch on these. I'm sure you guys know the topics. I'm going to explain how title is held in exchanges and the farming aspect of that. So at this time, if everyone on the call can silence their cell phones, we have a lot of great information for you. Some of the information that I'm sharing does have a licensing agreement, so those cannot be distributed because of our licensing agreement, but I do want to show you some very good information. And Lisa always finds this very, very exciting too, right? So
Yes.
let's get into it. Today, I'm going to explain a little bit about the Bay Area and Santa Clara County and kind of the demographics and where we are going. So over the next 5 years, when we pulled this data, we were pulling it because we were preparing for this class. And when Lisa and I sat down, we took a look to see kind of, where our area is going in terms of business, in terms of income and growth. And because of COVID, things are changing. And so when we looked at the data, we saw that over the next 5 years, there's going to be a population change of almost 300,000 people growing in the additional people in the Bay Area. So that's quite a lot of clients, right? That's quite a lot of potential. And if you look on the right-hand side, that's a lot of income. So we see overall in the San Francisco, San Jose metro area, the overall median household income is $112,000. So that's pretty high. And then we see the sub-ethnic categories at 117,000, African American at 59,000. And one thing I want to point out is you do notice the growth primarily is coming from the Asian and Hispanic communities, whereas the Caucasian and African American communities, the population is decreasing. So I wonder where they're moving to, right? One thing that I also like to always put in perspective is the owner-occupied units, because with population and with income comes owner-occupied and non-owner-occupied units. And so with owner-occupied units, we do see a growth as well. We're seeing a growth of over 61,000 additional units in the San Francisco market, San Francisco, San Jose Bay Area market. So that's very exciting. That's more business for you. That's more business for buyers and sellers, right? More opportunity. One thing I also like to take a look at is in our county. So in Santa Clara County, our median household income is a little bit more, but we're also seeing an additional growth of 81,000 people. So we, even with COVID, when we pulled this data about a year ago, and then we compared it to the data about when we pulled it, last month, the data is still consistent. So that means that, even with COVID and the changes, people are still moving and buying and selling, but there's still opportunity. It's not like they're all moving away and not coming back, right? So people are still moving here, and based on the data that we pulled. Geoscape is the analytics company that provides this data. And so when we took a look, 81,000 just in Santa Clara County. So 100% of that population growth is multicultural. So that's very, very interesting and very, very good to hear, right? At least. But with the population also in Santa Clara County, an additional 15,000 units. So with an additional 15,000 units, that's houses, condos, townhouses, right? Commercial units that are available to you guys to kind of work with, right? So it's good news, right? It's not like it's with COVID, everything went away and business is dying, right? Based on the numbers that we pulled, the units is still there. So that's very, very interesting. And Lisa might also talk upon a little bit about the renter-occupied units and how that market is doing. I also like to show the population by generation because it kind of shows us where we are, who we're working with, right, in our county. So here we see the largest group is between the ages of 0 and 19 at 550,000, but they're probably not buying and selling, right? The next one is millennials, followed by Generation X and baby boomers. So that's good. That's very, very good, right? And so with that, I want to also show the timing. So Lisa will touch on timing now.
Thanks, Jack. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're here to listen to our knowledge of 1031 exchange. 1031 exchange is for rental or investment property, and there are different things to follow with the guidelines. So one of the most critical parts of the 1031 exchange is the timing. Typically, you will sign up with your exchange company, you'll open escrow with your title company, and you will get a buyer on your property. When you get a buyer on your property, you'll have your escrow, and when you close, that will be day 0. So you sign up beforehand, you have your escrow period, you close, that's day 0, and then the next day is your first day of your timing. It's 180 days total to be able to close on a 1031 exchange. The hard part is that the first 45 days, you will need to figure out what you're going to buy. And so day 1, now we're at day 45, you'll want to make sure that you tell us what you could buy. And there's an option of buying up to 3 properties in one roll. And then you have the rest of the calendar to close on that property. You don't have to be in contract. You just need to make sure you tell us what's possible to buy. And after day 45, you need to be able to close on one or all of those properties. Really, what we're talking about is that 1031 exchange is a powerful option. It's your option if you are a seller of investment property to leverage what you could have paid in tax dollars towards another investment property. So if your client lets you know that they have an investment property, but they do not want to sell because of the taxes, well, at least you know that there's an option for them, especially if they want to buy another property, another investment property. The reasons why people do 1031 exchange are many, but it's a tax benefit for the investor. They would sell the property and buy something similar. What that means is that they would sell an investment property and buy an investment property. And they would put off paying the taxes. So this is a deferral option. Let's say your client exchanged, and they can exchange every 2 years. If they ever wanted to cash out, they would pay the capital gains taxes back. But most people who do 1031 exchange are looking at their options, and we can talk about more of those options where they're not going to have to pay the capital gains. This started over 100 years ago. So we've been doing 1031 exchanges, our company, for over 100 years. We just celebrated over 100 years. And this is an option that allows people to defer their capital gains taxes, like I mentioned. All of the states have chosen to follow. It's a federal law, and each state takes it differently. So for example, in California, there's a certain type of tax. In Nevada, there might be a different type of tax, which is no tax actually. And all the different states follow accordingly to what they mandate for their state. More of why people do 1031 exchanges. We get people calling us all the time because they are maxed out on their depreciation, which means if you have a single family resident or a residential type of investment property, that schedule is 27.5 years. So in other words, each year on your tax return, you can depreciate, but after 27.5 years, you cannot. So that's what we call trapped equity. And in that case, that person would probably want to exchange to get a better leveraged property for better income and efficiency. Another reason why our clients call is because they're tired of managing property. We call that the 4 T's: the toilets, the tenants, the trash, and the taxes. It's sort of a joke in our office, but truly, some of our clients are in the older generation, and maybe they've managed for a long time and they want to travel, or they want to make room for spending time with family. A lot of our clients are relocating. So that means that they might move out of the Bay Area or into the Bay Area, and they want to make sure that they can manage their property by bringing their investments closer to where they actually live. So that's one thing. Of course, we talked about leveraging. We had a client that sold out of the Bay Area, and it was a $400,000 property, and they were able to buy a property in Florida for $400,000 and get 4 times their rent. So these are some of the reasons why our clients are selling. Also, like I mentioned, to diversify. Maybe they have an estate plan and they want to make sure that their heirs are going to get a diversified portfolio. So they're looking at other options. We put together this slide because we wanted to make sure that you as the realtor or the lender would understand what the client is thinking when they're going to their CPA and they're realizing they have so much taxes and they may not want to sell their investment property. So if you're working with a client, maybe you help them buy their primary property and you check in with them from time to time and you find out they actually have a real estate portfolio, maybe in another part of the United States, and they're letting you know they don't want to sell because of the taxes. Well, this slide is a perfect slide to walk through so you can see what the taxes would look like. So in this example, if your client bought a piece of property, let's say 30 years ago, so their depreciation is maxed out, they can't depreciate anymore. They bought the property, 30 years ago for $100,000, which is good. They got a good price. They put 20,000 of their own money down, so that's their equity, and they had a loan of 80,000. They talked to their CPA, and their CPA says, yeah, you can sell, but you're going to have a tax consequence. The tax consequence would be $187,000 and change. Why is that? Well, we're precluded to give tax, legal, or financial advice, but I'm going to let you know what the taxes could be. So federal taxes start at 15%, and then you have your state tax. So in California, it starts at 9.3, but now it's more like 13% when you add up the Medicare and the mental health tax and some of the other taxes. Essentially, they have their depreciation recapture. So that means every year on their tax return, they can depreciate, their amount, and then they add it up over time, and then that's taxed at 25%. So clearly you can see in this slide that the client who's selling an investment property would be taxed remarkably. However, as their realtor, you know that they have the option to do the 1031 exchange. So you can let them know if they want to buy another investment property equal or greater, so 800,000 or more, they will fully tax defer and not pay any of the capital gains tax. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to show you the slide so you can see very clearly the tax consequences. Sometimes people think that the tax would only be 15%, but usually it's about 1/3 of their appreciation. So in this example, if they had 700,000 of appreciation, about 1/3 of that would be their tax. So also, a lot of our clients are talking about moving out of the state, which is not a problem. A lot of our clients are moving all over the United States. And with that being said, they just have to make note on their tax return each year that they did exchange out of California. That's nothing new. It's just now it's mandated to make sure you put that in your return. What does it take to qualify? Well, I'm more than happy to qualify your client for you. We're just giving you a broad overview of the 1031, but here are some basics on qualifying for an exchange. It must be an exchange. What that means is that it has to be involved in an exchange. You have to sign up to do the exchange in advance of your closing. So most people call us when they are getting ready to put the property on the market, and then we open up their exchange when they have a buyer on their transaction. Then it needs to be like-kind property. So like I mentioned before, if you sell an investment property, you would need to buy an investment property. That could be residential or commercial. It could be raw land. It could be a triple net. It could be a condo, townhome, whatever it is, it just needs to be an investment property on their tax return. Then, like I mentioned earlier, you do have the 45 days to identify and 180 days to close. So those are just some of the qualifications. We need to make sure that the vesting is the same also. So if it's a husband and wife, they would sell, they would buy. And if it's a partnership, that all the people in the partnership are available to do the exchange together. Some other requirements we will hold the money. So we would open up a separate segregated bank account under the client's tax ID, and then we would use the money under their authorization to the property they want to buy. We will make the deposits and pay the certain costs through the exchange. The taxpayer cannot benefit from the funds. So that just means that the taxpayer can't take any money and pay off mortgages or put it in their pocket or use it for another purpose. They would have to use all the money for the purposes of the real estate to purchase the next property. This is just a little bit of a review of what like kind is, and you can see very clearly, you know, a single family rental for a duplex, an apartment building for a retail center, Walmart, all those different commercial type buildings, a land for income producing vineyards or any kind of farm. Also a fourplex for a triple net or a DST, which is another like kind option. So these are all combinations that your client can make use of in the exchange. Again, we're talking about the tax, the 1031 exchange timing. A lot of people call us because they're unsure about it. Again, we want to talk about this because there's 180 days. It's consecutive with holidays and weekends. They need to be able to close on those on this replacement property within 180 days. But the hardest part, especially right now, because the market is tight, it's very competitive, as you know. I'm sure a lot of your buyers might be fatiguing because it's hard to get into contract, but our clients are successful in getting into their replacement property. They just have to make sure they use the 45 days to get into contract. And some of our clients are even closing within the 45 days. So that's one thing to strategize. You're more than welcome to call me up and we can talk about a strategy for your clients. We love this little handy slide that Jack put together. It's just sort of a fun way to look at the timing. So if you're unsure, just let us know and we can send you this slide. You can keep it on your desktop so you always know how to look at the timing for the 1031. Again, a little bit more about the timing, but what I wanted to point out is the identification requirement. So we do have the 3 property rule, which means you can buy your number 1 property, you have a backup number 2, and a backup number 3. So let's say within your 45 days, you get into contract to your number 1 property, and then something falls apart. Well, you can try as many times as you need to throughout that exchange. You don't even have to put an identification to us yet. But before midnight on the 45th day, you would need to tell us in writing and signed and dated by the taxpayer, the exchanger, that what properties they're going to buy. And then there's another option that I don't talk about too often unless I hear that the client wants to buy more than 3 properties, so 4 or more properties. If they're looking to buy 4 or more properties, I would guide them to the 200% rule, which helps them identify as many properties as they want, as long as it's not 200% of what they sold. So I'll give you a quick example. If they sold $1 million in real estate, they would not be able to identify more than 2 million, 200% on that form. So they could put 4, 5, 6 properties, but just making sure that they're not putting more than $2 million worth on that list. What does the client need to buy? So if they want to fully tax defer, I mentioned it just a little bit before, they would want to buy equal or greater in value. That just means fair market. And then they would buy equal or greater in equity, meaning they would spend all the money and replace into a new real estate. And then they would want to make sure they had equal or greater in debt. So what that means is if your client had a $1 million property and $500,000 was the loan amount, they would want to make sure they were able to buy $1 million or more in real estate. Well, if they have a $500,000 loan, obviously that gets paid off in the closing. So they're going to be short $500,000. So they would just need to either bring in the cash or get another loan for $500,000 or more to be able to buy that $1 million or more property. One thing that we like to mention is that there are expenses that you can use to make a net price. So if your client did sell a $1 million property, there's going to be some costs that they can deduct, which would net their price. So they can deduct the real estate commission, the transfer tax, the reporting fee, the title and escrow fees, and the exchange fees. So with those 5 items, they're able to use that to net their price. So if they sold 1 million, and let's pretend all of those costs were 100,000, they would need to look for a property for 900,000 or more. And then the things that don't count are loan fees, security deposits, and prorated rents. If there was a case where they had those items, they would want to pay that outside of the exchange so that they wouldn't have a tax consequence. As I mentioned previously, one of the qualifications is the same taxpayer rule. And this is just some examples of vesting consistency, which is how they're on title. We want to make sure they're in the same way they're on title of the sale is the same way they're on the title to the purchase. And it doesn't have to be exact. What I mean by that is if you are an ABC partnership, you would want to go into an ABC partnership. So that would be exact. The XYZ corporation would need to be exact. The Wilson Revocable Trust, you can change the names as long as it's the same names in that revocable trust. And then in the case of a sole member of an LLC, for example, like Mary Jones, you would want to make sure that it was just a sole member and she could have her name put that way. Also with 100% ownership, you can buy into a tenant in common. So these items we can talk to you about. Jack and I are really good about coordinating with the client ways to hold title. And Jack has this wonderful option, 1-page flyer that you could request that would show different ways to hold title. Who can exchange? So like we talked about it before, disregarded entities, single member LLCs, that's just a review of that one vesting page that we just talked about. And the revocable trust, revocable means that you can break out of the trust. So there's flexibility if there's family members in a revocable trust, let's say they're tenant in common, each person can do their own thing. And therefore the ones that want to exchange can exchange. The ones that don't want to and want to cash out, they can pay their tax. If let's say there's 4 members in that revocable trust as tenant in common, each person can do their own thing. And that makes it nice because maybe some siblings need to cash out because they need the money and they're okay to pay the taxes. And maybe others still want to be mindful of their investing and leveraging their tax dollars. This is one thing I just want to bring up because I feel a lot of our clients are in a position to take the 121 exemption. The 121 exemption is for primary property. So 1031 doesn't do primary property. However, some of our clients have primary property and they're looking at their options when they sell. If you have primary property or your client has primary property and they've owned it and lived in the property as a principal residence for 2 out of the last 5 years, they can take $250,000 of exemption on their taxes. So that means they can take $250,000 off the top of their taxes and not worry about that, put it in their pocket. Or if they're married, they can do $500,000. And you can do this exclusion every 2 years. And Jack, would you want to talk a little bit about this app that would be important for them to know?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lisa mentioned a little bit about owner-occupied properties and primary properties. And so we have an app that allows you to see the status of any real residential and commercial property that has an APN number. And so this app is a very powerful tool that allows you to get the owner's mailing information, where their tax records go, and also if it's an absentee owned property or it probably is an investment property. And so we have an app that really can support this type of transaction if that's what you're looking to build.
And back to the idea of the 121, like I mentioned, that's for primary property. And however, sometimes our clients will call us and say, you know, I had my primary property that I had for several years. I decided to rent it out for a few years, and now I'm not sure what I should do. If your client has a lot of appreciation in their property, they could make use of combining the 121 and the 1031. So a perfect person to be able to do this would be someone that has owned a property for many years, let's say 10 or more years, and then they decided to rent it out for the last 2 years. If they chose to rent it out for the last 2 years, but no more than 3, if you move past 3, you disqualify for the 121. So usually it would be 2 years up to 3 of renting, and they can take their exemption of 500,000 as a married couple or 250 as a single, and take that right off the top, and then make use of the remaining amount for a 1031 exchange. And if they just make sure that they sell that portion and buy that portion in investment property and hold it that way for 2 years, then that would qualify for the combination, what we call the super tax break. So it's a really wonderful option. I had a client that they called me up. They said, you know, we're moving out of California. Actually, we've been renting in Idaho. We have family in Idaho. We want to move there. So our primary property that we've had in Almaden in the Santa Clara County, we decided that it had so much appreciation, we just didn't want to sell it because we were afraid of the appreciation, tax dollars that we'd have to pay. But we're just calling because we're wondering, what could we do? Well, in that case, that person was able to sell that property in Almaden and make use of the 500,000 exemption. So it was a $2.5 million property. They were able to take 500,000 off the top of the tax. So now they're only looking at $2 million of property. And then they were able to buy an investment property in Idaho where they want to move into anyway. And they just made sure it was $2 million. They bought that property. Now they're going to rent it for 2 years. And then after, they can move into it as their forever home. So you can see how this option could work for some people. And it's always good to ask questions when your clients are talking to you about their real estate portfolio. This is just a little bit more detail of what I just said. So if you want to look at our slides after, we're more than happy to send them to you. And then also more examples of this also. So we won't get into it because I just explained it, but these are just some ideas that you can look at. And in addition, if you wanted to move into the property, you can do it. You just want to make sure that you hold it as an investment for 2 years. And then you're actually not having to pay the capital gains tax back because you didn't sell. And if you live in that property long enough, let's say the remainder of your life, well, obviously you won't pay tax. And also if you live in it long enough and you choose to sell it, you would mitigate all those tax deferral taxes that you would pay back. And you might even get the exemption of the 121 in a prorated amount. So there's a lot of combinations you would want to talk to your CPA about that can help you leverage your real estate dollars. Just another example. So we'll just move on from the slide, but these are just good ideas. One thing that our clients do ask about often is vacation homes. In the regulation, vacation home now qualifies. You want to be careful to make use of the rules though. So if your client wants to buy an investment property that would be used for vacation, they would want to make sure that they at least rented it out for 2 weeks for it to qualify, so 14 days, and they would not be able to stay in the property for more than 14 days. So if they stayed there for 14 days, that's fine. Or if they wanted to rent it out, you know, Airbnb or VRBO, they can do that. And let's say they rented it out for 250 days in that year, they could stay there 10% of the time, so 25 days. So these are some options, but you just want to be careful that you only follow the regulation and the rules. Otherwise, you could disqualify your exchange, or it could be considered tax fraud. A little bit more like I talked about. And then also one thing that our clients are talking about, and it's actually trending right now, we have a robust reverse exchange team. We have a whole legal department, and we have a dedicated reverse exchange officer to help our clients who want to do a reverse exchange. So you know this market is tight, and you know it's hard to get your offer accepted. But for someone that has a lot of appreciation and a lot of capital gains tax at stake, they do not want to fail their exchange. And so to make sure that they are going to get the property they want and not worry about the timing, what they could do is go into a reverse exchange. Now, the reverse exchange isn't for everybody, but for some people, it really helps. One thing to think about with the reverse is if you need a loan for the purchase of the property, and you don't have cash to buy the property up front, it might be more challenging and more costly. However, if you have all the cash to be able to front purchasing that property, then it works out beautifully. You don't have to worry about a lender. And then also the cost to do a reverse is more remarkable than, let's say, a regular exchange. So let's say a regular exchange would be something like $1,500 total. A reverse exchange could be something like $8,000 to $10,000. So it's not for everybody, but it is very important for some of our clients who need to buy the property they need, and they want to make sure they're not going to worry about the timing. Also, we do have several clients that the only way they do exchanges are reverse because they want to make sure there's no fail in the timing. So if your client has questions about it, we're happy to qualify. And it's not for everybody, like I mentioned, but it's super helpful for a lot of our clients. One thing that Jack and I noticed is that there are ways that you can prospect if you want to get more business with investor clients. So for example, there's ways that we can help you look up how much appreciation a property has had based on some data. And then let's say they are in the 20-year mark, they're probably needing to look at exchanging that investment because it's going to get maxed out at 27.5 years. So these are some things to think about. Also, a lot of our empty nesters, there are clients that are children have gone off to college and they're now reducing their home size. They're looking at their real estate portfolio and wondering what they could do. What are their options? Another idea is that we have a way to identify our clients that have a lot of investments in different types of investment portfolio. So for example, ones that would have multi-unit or mixed-use property or multiple properties. So if you are needing to look at that option for your pipeline, for your business, to grow your business, we're more than happy to help you create your own particular farm that would be for absentee owners or the people that aren't occupying the property. And then Jack, if you want to just share a little bit on what that would look like for everybody.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, so like Lisa mentioned, we do have farming, which is the opportunity where you can target absentee-owned properties or rental properties or even properties where the owners reside out of state. So we had one agent that actually wanted to target all owners that lived in Nevada but had rental properties in the Bay Area because he was from Nevada. And so there was different ways that you can be very creative and to target investors because investors might have multiple properties on hand, right? And so if you win them over as a client, you might win their entire portfolio and the opportunity to service them in real estate for their portfolio. So Lisa and I are happy to sit down with you one-on-one to go over some farming strategies if that's something that you decide that you would like to do to help you increase your business.
Yeah. Thanks, Jack. So one thing I just wanted to point out is there are different exchange companies that you might know of or you might look into. Not all of them are the same. You want to make sure that you're working with a company that's a national leader. We at First American Exchange are backed by First American Title. So that's very important because your proceeds are guaranteed. So your client's proceeds are guaranteed. Not too long ago, there were a lot of things happening. Exchange is an unregulated industry. So you really want to be careful that your qualified intermediary is someone that has insurance that is backed. Also, like I mentioned, the financial security, that the exchange funds are guaranteed, that there's the separate bank account that we would open with their tax identification. And we provide fidelity insurance, E&O insurance, a fidelity bond. You want to make sure you're working with a company that has a reputation. Unfortunately, there have been some cases of clients going into an exchange company that might be a little bit less expensive. So they felt, like they wanted to use that option. And unfortunately, those companies went bankrupt and then their proceeds went away. And they also then had to pay the tax. So it's very important that you look at the options of who your exchange company would be, your qualified intermediary, and make sure it fits your criteria of what you want.
Yeah, so Lisa was sharing how investors will want to sell and also buy into new exchanges, right? And so when someone is buying and selling, there's the option to create some different net sheets for them. And so we here at First American have created a way where you can compare different net sheets and compare different offers for the same property. So you can create, so let's say one investor has a house and that house is being listed at 1.5 and they receive an offer for 1.6 and then 1.75 and then maybe one at 1.89. And so there's different ways to do the calculation, but we have a very easy way that allows you to do all of those multiple offers with one click, essentially. And so Lisa and I will be happy to kind of show you how to do the investor calculations with My First AM and Costs First. And speaking of My First AM, I did mention this system earlier. This system allows you to see absentee-owned properties versus owner-occupied properties, and also the owner's mailing tax address. And so if you'd like access into the system, please email myself and we would be able to get that to you. Lisa also referenced a lot of different topics earlier, right? And so on the title side, we also have different marketing materials that explains 1031 exchanges, the timing, foreign investor seller guides, buyer guides. So we have many different resources that is available to you to help make the explanation a little bit easier for your seller and for your investor. One thing I also wanted to share is we have a multicultural website. So I believe everyone on this call might speak Chinese. We have a Chinese website that allows you to share different videos, seller videos, buyer videos, TRID, the closing disclosure. And so there's many different resources, and our multicultural resources has been featured by the National Association of Realtors. So it's a very, very great opportunity to share digitally what we have. And this website was just recently relaunched with a new image. So it's very, very cool. I also wanted to share that with your clients, we have 28 Bay Area title locations, and I believe our exchange department has 3 Bay Area locations as well. Is that right, Lisa?
Yes, we have a headquarter where we help all over the United States. So if your client's even selling in different states, we're able to help, definitely.
Yeah, so we have many different locations. So just on the title side, we have 28 locations for your clients, and Lisa also has multiple locations throughout the Bay Area. And so we're really here to help streamline your process and make it easier. And talking about streamlining, we have a new system called ZOCM. And so ZOCM allows the buyers to digitally deposit their earnest money into our escrow. And so you get immediate receipts. This saves time. You don't have to run to the bank. And it looks like this. It looks like mobile banking. And so this allows you to be able to log on, deposit your earnest money into escrow, into First American, and instantly get a receipt. And so this saves time. It's no contact. So I know because of COVID, people don't want contact that as well. And so this is a very recent launch that we have done. The most recent we want to share is our integration with Lone Wolf, which you may know as Zip Forms. First American Title is the first national underwriter to integrate with Zip Forms. And so through your contracts, through your MLS, and through your Zip Forms platform, you are able to open transactions with First American now. So that's a very, very good and very, very easier option. If you are already in there, you can absolutely send us a order. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back to Lisa. Do we have any questions? We covered quite a bit of information, so I'm going to open it up. Does anyone have any title questions for me, title escrow questions for me, or any exchange questions for Lisa? At this time, you are welcome to unmute yourself and you can ask some questions. Or you can type it in the chat box and I will be monitoring the chat box. The Q&A, you can use the Q&A section or the chat box. We did save some time towards the end for some questions. Lisa, do you want to share a recent exchange story, like maybe a different one that isn't as common?
Sure. Yeah, so I get different scenarios all the time. I had a client that had one property they wanted to sell and they wanted to buy multiple properties. So we were able to help them sell the one big property and go into over 20 properties in the United States. We have one family in particular that has a lot of property in the local Bay Area, and they're always selling different things at different times. It's always exciting. They usually have about 20 people that are doing the exchange together. So we've gotten to know them really well, and we help them every few months when they want to do their exchanges. Like I mentioned before, we do have some clients that just only do reverse exchanges, which is very interesting because it seems like it wouldn't be cost effective, but for them it is, because even though it might cost $8,000 to $10,000 to do a reverse, they're saving hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars in paying capital gains tax if they failed. So it's not uncommon for us to work with different people all over the United States. And as small as a transaction as a $50,000 piece of land in another state to even a $1 billion transaction. So we work a lot with residential and commercial, and it's surprising how much a mom and pop have developed over the course of their time. You know, they might have been working for PG&E or a teacher, and the next thing you know, they have 20 pieces of property. A good friend of ours, the wife was a nurse and the husband was a teacher. He taught wood shop. He also did just some side construction work on the side, and they were able to get a portfolio of almost 30 pieces of property over time. So now they don't want to buy more real estate, but when they do sell, they're looking at some other options like DST. I didn't really talk about DST much, but what has been trending in the last couple years is some of our clients that don't want more property, like the traditional real estate, I should say, they're looking to get into a fractional ownership. And a DST is a legal entity in a trust wrapper. It's considered Delaware statutory trust. And in 2004, there was a letter ruling that was enabling a DST to be a like-kind Prop 7 or 86, and they were able to utilize the DST. So this is helping some of our clients that have extra money, let's say $100,000 short that they don't want to buy. They don't have any properties that are 100,000. They can go into a DST. So that's what we've seen happen a lot, Jack. A lot of people going into reverse and a lot of people doing DST.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And I myself have, from the title side, have seen different scenarios with 1031 exchanges. We've seen some last minute exchanges, and we see investors planning it out. And so, of course, we always recommend when you're speaking to your investor to plan it out so that you're not rushing through escrow at the last minute. It's very important to plan it out and make sure the client also talks to their tax advisor, because there may be tax questions that we can't answer. And so it's very important that they partner with their tax advisor, a CPA, to know what they're doing, to talk to Lisa's team to understand how an exchange works, and to talk to us to make sure that the title and closing side matches up with what they're looking for. And so it's very important to do that homework before they start listing the property to sell.
Yes.
Yeah, so we received a question, and I'll just ask it to Lisa. Lisa, our question came in, does First American handle the exchange, or is it a separate company?
It's a really good question. I get that question a lot. So you'll want to open your escrow with Jack and his team, First American Title. And then if your client wants to do an exchange, we are a subsidiary company to First American Title. And yes, we are the qualified intermediary company that will accommodate and facilitate the paperwork and the bank account and the monies for your client.
Yeah. So the funds will go from title and escrow, right? Once they close, it will go from escrow directly to the exchange. So it won't hit the client's bank account, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's how that exchange will work. Is there anyone else that has any questions or any scenarios that we can run through? We do have some time, so we can answer any questions that you have. You can use it in the chat box. We had a question that says, so the money directly escrow to the new escrow. Lisa, that's correct. So once it closes, escrow will send the funds to the exchange company. The money will sit in the exchange company until they get in contract and close on their new property, and exchange will then send it to the new escrow to close on the new property.
Yeah, so we work on both sides of the transaction. So your client opens up their escrow, and then they close on that escrow, and then they go to buy their replacement property. If you're representing them in their purchase, of course, we're going to continue working with you. The property they choose to buy, the title and escrow company that property is opened with, we will work with that title company accordingly. And the one thing we like about working directly with First American Title is that it's so streamlined for us. We all know each other. We always work, to help in any situation, even the last minute situations that Jack was talking about. I think even a week ago, we had a client that didn't know they wanted to do an exchange until they got to the closing table when they were signing off on their transaction, and they realized they had quite a bit of tax. And so there's a withholding sheet that the Franchise Tax Board will require right then when they close on their investment property. And sometimes that's when the client gets a sticker shock of how much tax they're going to have to pay. So we will stop what we're doing, and we will make sure that the title and escrow officer will send us the preliminary title report and the ratified purchase contract. Then we create our exchange documents super fast, send it straight back to the escrow officer or the notary or whoever's helping with the signing. And then the client is safe to do an exchange if they sign before they close. So yeah, we're here to help, and we want to make sure that even though you may not remember all this information today, that you would look at us as a partner, similar to how you would refer your client to a lender to get pre-approved. We would pre-approve your client and make sure they understood everything, and then we would be able to educate them on the 1031. So you don't have to worry about educating them. You can just let them know it's an option, and then Jack and I will help support your client. And if they speak another language, specifically Chinese, Jack and I would help with that translation, and or Spanish. We have many different languages that we can help you with.
Thank you, Lisa. We also received one question being asked, will 1031 exchange disappear next year? Or what are the rumors, or what's, what about that?
Yes, it's a really good question. We have been inundated with a lot of people who have concerns. As you know, 1031 exchange is such an amazing option for investors. It's really helping our economy to stimulate it. If we think about it, there's so many entities that are involved in the exchange. You have the lender, you have the title company, you have the realtor, you have the exchange company, you have the all the participants in building and helping sell the property, all the different components. If they took 1031 away, it would really change the course of our economy across the United States. It really wouldn't be a good idea. It's not a loophole. Most of our clients end up at some point paying some of their taxes anyway. So in the end, it is helping our economy as a whole in the whole United States. But from time to time, specifically during a change in administration, there might be a tax reform. So in our previous administration, we were safe. And in this administration, they've put some proposals together. However, there are some things we can do. You can send in, by a click of a button on our website, a way that you can send that you want to keep 1031 exchange. It's really easy. You just open up our website, there's a red button, you just click on it, and you can send it to our governances to make sure that people know that we want to keep 1031. Also, we have on our company, our president is Julie Baird. She's also the president of the Federal Exchange Association. So with that being said, she lobbies with NAR, National Association of Realtors. They're both those groups are lobbying to keep 1031. So we're pretty happy about the work that we've done. We've gone to Capitol Hill. We've done a lot of presentations on preserving this option. And they have a small window of time to make sure this doesn't get changed. And so we're getting good positive feedback. So we're hoping for the best, and it looks like it's going to be something that we can preserve.
Yeah, awesome. We received a question, and Bill is asking, there's a property, and if it's a primary property and it's the increase has been more than 500,000, but the primary owner wants to upgrade to a bigger home, what option do we have?
So are we talking just of primary property?
Yes.
Then is primary property. Okay. So primary property has the 121 exemption. So of course, as you know, the 500,000, they can exempt the tax off the top. If they have more tax, so I'll give you an example. I had a client in Cupertino. They bought their property for, I think they bought it for 100,000 or something like that. And this was, over 40 years ago, or 30 something years ago. And now they would go put it on the market, and it looked like it was going to get probably 3 million. So with that being said, I mean, if you take 500,000 off the top, you're still stuck with 2.5 million. And if they bought it for 100,000, it's really 2.4 of appreciation. So about a third of that 2.4 would be the tax bill. So the options could be, if you look at Prop 19, there's some solutions with moving a tax base. I think you can do it with more options now. You want to talk with your CPA about that. And then also, if that's not something that's helpful, the tax base, for example, then you could combine the 121, so selling a primary property with 1031. But to qualify, you would have to rent that property out for 2 years, and then you can sell it, and then you could take the 500,000 off the top, but then you would be left with the remaining amount to buy into a investment property. So if your client's okay to rent that property out for 2 years, so now we're looking at a 4-year plan, because you're going to have to rent it out for 2 years and then buy a property and rent it out for 2 years. The client can then move into the property, but these are some options where they can defer all the capital gains tax in terms of that investment portion.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
We have time for one more question. If anyone has it, please use the chat box or the Q&A box. We'll be happy to take some questions. Or if you'd rather talk offline, our information's on the screen here. You're more than welcome to email us or to call us. And we'd be more than happy to answer your title and escrow questions or your exchange questions. And you are very welcome. It is our pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to be a resource. It makes our job fulfilling to be able to give you any resources you need, or education, or a one-on-one with your client. It's not uncommon where we'll do a conference call and have everyone be able to ask their questions, and then we can help them plan ahead.
So we received a question. One investor has a property in Seattle and they would like their son to buy the property. The house is in a trust and he is the beneficiary. Is that a possibility?
There's a lot of combinations where families really want to help their families. Right now is a really important time to be able to look at the future and what's possible for our family. So if you had a property, let's say in Washington, and you wanted to sell it, and you wanted a relative to buy from you, that is okay. If you wanted to buy from a relative, then there's some criteria to follow. That criteria is not your question, but just to go over it, if you want, I have a client right now actually who's doing this. If they want to buy their relative's property, they can, but that relative who they're buying from would also need to do an exchange. So you can see how it wouldn't work if you're buying from a relative and that's their primary property. That wouldn't work. But in your example, selling a Washington property and having a relative buy from you is not a problem.
Makes sense. And if you would like to talk about the title and escrow side or the exchange side for a specific scenario, I would say reach out to Lisa. And Lisa's very good about looping me in if there's any escrow or title questions, and vice versa. If it's something that I can't answer on the exchange side, I will then loop in Lisa. Again, we are now at the 30-minute mark. At 12:30, our class has come to conclusion. You guys asked some very, very good questions. And so if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to us. And again, I want to thank Jerry and thank you to the Legend Real Estate team for having us speak today. It's been our pleasure. We always love speaking to your group. So again, at this time, this concludes our presentation. And we want to thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank
We're
you,
here to
everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.